Hello everyone, my name is Ben Dave from eSignal. Hope everyone is having a great day or night wherever you may be. Before I go further, I need to perform a sound check. In the left-hand margin, you will see a chat box window. Can a few of you please type yes or Y if you can hear me? Mark, Roswitha, Dave, Helen, thank you so much. Okay, great. Thanks for the responses. A few more logistics before we begin. If the audio is not clear, if you hear an echo, try logging off Adobe Connect, then log back on. Unfortunately, there's not much else we can do to troubleshoot any audio or video issues you may be experiencing. Secondly, you can find the contact details for Predict Wall Street as well as eSignal in the notes section on the lower left-hand corner of this box. There's also a full screen option of Adobe Connect if the images you see are smaller than you prefer. However, keep in mind that this will disable the chat function for you. As a thank you for attending, this presentation is being recorded and everyone will receive a copy sometime afterwards. At this time, I wanted to highlight eSignal's special offers page. In your browser, you can type in eSignal.com/specials. And a few of the specials we're currently offering right now is you can try a 30-day risk-free trial of eSignal 12.1, which is our latest version of eSignal. For those of you currently on the eSignal platform or have previously been on the eSignal platform, did you know that you could refer a friend to eSignal and get credits for doing so? Again, these and other special offers can be found by typing in www.esignal.com/specials into your browser. Today's special offer featured from Predict Wall Street is, for your information, there are 3 versions of Predict Wall Street's app. The Elite version has a free 1-month trial for you to try out and test drive. The retail price of that app is $99.99. Did you also know that eSignal offers multitudes and plenty opportunities for you to learn trading and other types of trading related material by going to learning.esignal.com. We offer classes again on our latest version, which is eSignal.12.1 for those of you who are just starting off, as well as those of you who are currently or have been in the platform and are just looking for additional tips and tricks. For those of you who are considering or currently do trade in either Forex or futures, we also offer classes in those type of asset classes. And in terms of upcoming eSignal partner webinars, the next couple of weeks, we will be featuring Greg Hammond and Molly Cox from Orca next week. The week after, we'll be presenting Dane Vrabec from Quadrant. And a few weeks later, we'll be presenting Steve Nissen from candlecharts.com. With those details aside, I wanted to formally introduce Calen Lopata of Predict Wall Street. Calen oversees business development, engineering, and information technology initiatives within Predict Wall Street and frequently serves as a technical liaison. He started working with Predict Wall Street in 2002, developing a beta website and the first graphical prediction interface. Outside Predict Wall Street, Calen founded a successful web consulting company and spun off a specialized online educational service. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in computer science with honors from the University of California at Santa Cruz. This webinar will begin with a light overview of the science behind Predict Wall Street and conclude with a live demo of the tools to demonstrate how our data makes trading more profitable. Additional items that will be covered in this webinar include bullets measuring investor sentiment in real time. The Predict Wall Street community votes on the future direction of individual stocks and indexes and receives market-beating data that helps you make better trades. Showing accuracy of predictions. This shows users the vote tallies for each stock, along with the accuracy of the community predictions, which gives you even more information to help make profitable trading decisions. Going beyond the raw data. Predict Wall Street spent years developing sophisticated algorithms that combine real-time raw data with proprietary historical database for predictions that consistently beat the market. Comparing stock, industry, and sector. The Predict Wall Street community sentiment meter uses proprietary process data to show how the prediction for an individual stock compares to the predictions for the rest of its industry and sector. Charting to identify trends. The Predict Wall Street advanced algorithms process real-time and historical data to produce market-beating predictive sentiment data, which then can be used to plot alongside stock prices, making it easy for you to spot short and long-term trends at a glance. In order to keep Calen's presentation flowing well, I ask that you please hold your questions till the end of the presentation. However, please go ahead and send your questions through the chat box and Calen or I will respond in due time. With these final details aside, please welcome Calen Lopata from PredictWallStreet. And again, thank you for attending this eSignal. Calen, off to you.
Great, thanks Ben, and thanks everyone for attending. I appreciate your time. So as Ben mentioned, I'll be doing a light overview of the science behind PredictWallStreet, and then I'll do a demo of the tool. Before I get started, let me go ahead and share what I have here. And I'd just like to do a kind of elaboration briefly on PredictWallStreet and what we do. So I'm sure everyone is familiar or has at least heard the term crowdsourcing. It's something that's got a lot of buzz lately. Obviously, with social media coming to the forefront in people's minds, not just related to what's happening in terms of entertainment and ideas, but also related to finance. We've seen a number of financial technology or fintech startups coming online that really use this information to try to get an edge in the market. So what PredictWallStreet is looking to do is not try to do anything like, recognizing patterns in what people are tweeting or posting to Facebook, or doing fancy natural language or speech recognition to find out what people are saying. We take a very simple approach and ask you, what do you think is going to happen with this stock tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter? And by gathering that type of very simple, very specific information, we've been able to compile a large database of over 35 million votes over the past 8 years, and then process that data to enable us to identify trends. And we give that data right back to you through our tool. So to understand why it works and why we came down this path in the first place, I can do this sort of light overview of the science. So you can see how we came up with these ideas and what these ideas are founded on. And then I can go into the tool itself. So to begin, let's just look at the scientific foundations behind what we're doing. Now, of course, crowdsourcing has so much buzz lately, and a lot of people are often wondering, well, what does the crowd possibly know? I'm sure everyone has their own idea of what's going to happen with the stock market. How do they know anything better than someone else? Well, it turns out there's actually some pretty sophisticated research done to show that crowds, or massive amounts of people, can be extremely intelligent when their ideas and information are pooled together efficiently. There have been a number of people who have worked on this. These two scientists here we're just calling out. Herb Simon, 1978 Nobel Prize winner in economics. He actually worked with PredictWallStreet's founder, CEO Craig Kaplan, early on in Craig Kaplan's career. And a lot of the ideas that go into PredictWallStreet came during that relationship. Also, another scientist, Vernon Smith, Nobel laureate in economics as well, did a lot of research in experimental markets. Now, experimental markets are the idea where you can create a market based on anything. For example, a classic market was to buy or sell shares of an expected event. For example, who's going to be elected president? You might have a certain number of shares available for each candidate, and then people participating in the market can buy and sell shares of that candidate's ability to win. And eventually what happens is the market was so efficient that as election day got closer, the candidate who was inevitably going to win had a stock price that was incredibly high, and the candidate who was not performing well had a very low price. So this type of a market actually ended up predicting a future event. So that's to give you a quick taste of the ideas. Now, obviously, there's a lot of information here that I'm not going to be able to cover. So hopefully that provides a bit of a foundation. To put it more simply, there are two types of approaches to the wisdom of crowds, or crowdsourcing, the information available through many people. One you can think of as jelly beans in a jar. Now, this relates back to that classic fair trick where, at a large county fair or state fair, they have a giant jar of jelly beans, and each individual is asked to guess how many jelly beans are in the jar. And what happens is often each individual's vote will not be exactly correct, but when you aggregate those votes together, you'll actually get a number that's surprisingly accurate. There's also the concept of a needle in a haystack, and I think this is probably the most familiar. This is something like what we find on Wall Street, where we have certain experts who put out their opinions and their analysis. This is the idea that there are many people who have information, but you want to find the one very sharp individual who has the best information. So these are two different approaches to taking crowds and gathering information. To expand a little bit on the jelly beans in the jar, I think the metaphor is pretty simple, but it does go back to a number of different things. The Wisdom of Crowds is a book by James Surowiecki. Great book. Jelly beans in a jar idea is popularized in there. And of course, we're all familiar with this idea of consensus estimates, where we take many people's estimates of earnings and put them together to come up with a consensus. So that's the same idea. We also have the idea of experts versus regular investors. Perhaps you could just take the opinions of the experts and exclude the regular investors. What we do at Predict Wall Street is we put everyone together because more information is better. The more data you can have, the better you can pick up on trends. I mentioned a little bit about the prediction markets as well. And I also mentioned about how you could have stocks or shares in a certain event. And you can think about the real stock market buying and selling shares of, let's say, Apple or Google as actually voting for that company. That's you putting stake in that company's value in the future. And then the price actually reflects how that company is expected to perform. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of ways that people can harvest information from social media, tweets, blogs, news, any types of data that's available. There are many, many firms looking to get an edge. So most of these have been captured in some way and pooled together. Now, the needle in a haystack approach, that's a little bit different because you can't just take everybody's information. What you're looking for is really that sharp individual to give you the information that you need. Now, here you would need some kind of credentials or qualifications to find that needle. What is the needle? What does it look like? How do you find that one individual that has the best information? You need some type of objective criteria to understand how to identify them. Often that relates to a track record. But some of the challenges with this needle in a haystack approach is if someone is identified as being the expert, the one who has the best information, how are they going to be incentivized to actually share their information? Why would they give it away if they've got such great info? Also, if someone's identified as an expert, what's to prevent them from, let's say, making certain recommendations that may not be in everyone's best interest because they know it will have an impact on the market? And then, of course, there's the classic example of, well, maybe the guy was just lucky. You can be fooled by randomness. For example, if you flip a coin 10 times and it comes up 9 times heads, maybe you're saying it's a lucky coin. Maybe it's just pure chance. There's that classic story about if you put enough monkeys in a room and have them typing into infinity, eventually they'll produce Hamlet. Well, that's the same kind of idea here, that simple random luck can actually produce what appears to be information. Now, these are all challenges of that needles in a haystack approach, of course, and as you can tell, the Predict Wall Street approach is more in line with the jelly beans in a jar, where we take more information to give you back something that's valuable that you can use in your own trading. Now, of course, I always like to touch on the madness of crowds. We talk a lot about the wisdom of crowds, crowdsourcing, that sort of thing, but we have to identify that crowds can be pretty crazy. You can have two types of madness, essentially. There's the obvious type of madness, the things that we can see, that herd behavior. For example, a mass panic in the stock market, where suddenly we see that a stock begins to drop and people just begin to sell and sell because they're scared, they panic. Or in other cases, when we get a bubble in the market, that can be that irrational exuberance that we've seen in the past, where people invest because there's so much hype about a certain company or about a certain idea that's not necessarily founded in fact, but it's just that herd behavior where people will jump onto that bandwagon and participate in the market. Now, this is, of course, just biology. We're hardwired to do this sort of thing, and often we'll avoid pain versus look to gain profits. We might avoid, let's say, exiting a position because we know we'll realize losses, and we might find that other people are doing the same, and that's why perhaps the stock market price hasn't reached its most efficient point. There are also a few different subtle types of madness, framing, anchoring effects, satisficing. These are all more, I guess, technical scientific things, which we can, I guess, go over at another time. Now, really what we want to do is find out how we can use that crowd information to generate profit. Now, there's two different ways that we can do this as well. So we talked about the concept of jelly beans in a jar. So that's really where PredictWallStreet is coming from in terms of gathering the information. We want to take as much info as possible and put it together. But then once we've got that total information, what do you do with it? There's two different ways you can go. You could say, let's take all that information and whatever the crowd thinks is going to happen, let's just do the opposite. Let's trade as a contrarian. And this can actually work very well if we're encountering that herd behavior. For example, if there is that irrational exuberance or that hype around a stock, we can see that sentiment starts to grow very positively for that stock. And then we can say, well, that stock's going to come down, and take a position that will really take advantage of that information. We can also, of course, trade based on that wisdom. If we see that the consensus information, when put together, has value, it might actually predict the stock. And we can see this often with data that we show in the tool. You can actually identify trends using the charts that we provide, comparing the sentiment over time versus the price, and get an idea for when that sentiment leads the price. In other words, when that sentiment is actually predictive of the future price movements. Now getting into the specifics of the PredictWallStreet tool, I mentioned that we have the poll data. Now the data actually goes back to 2005, and we started to get a high volume of data in 2007. That data that we're talking about is the raw votes, the up and down votes of people over a day, week, month, and a quarter. That raw information is what we call poll data. And a poll is very simple, of course. Anybody can do a poll. Where we really find the value is in taking that information and processing it to identify when there are trends. Of course, when you're trying to process information, more information is better. We have over 35 million individual poll results, individual predictions, and mostly from retail online investors. Now, everyone is welcome to the community, but the advantage of PredictWallStreet is you're going to look beyond what experts are saying. You're actually going to tap into what individual investors, each of whom has an impact on the market, each individual investor's ideas about where the stock is moving. Now, of course, we provide accuracy information as well. Often the first question is, well, I can see that you are telling me some people are voting that, let's say, Apple is a good stock, is something that you should buy. But how accurate are they? Well, we always include this in each version of the tool. And then we also include the process data. We process it in a couple of ways. One is we take out the bias, which I'll explain in just a moment when I demo the tool. And then we also produce daily forecasts so that you can see for a certain number of stocks what we expect is going to happen the next day. So with those forecasts, those are released before the market, and it's about 3 to 6 different stocks every day. So right around 1 a.m. Eastern time, you can find these forecasts within our tool, and then you can act on them if you like. The idea behind the forecast is we measure them. So we release them at 1 a.m. and we measure them as if you acted on the forecast at market open and exited your position at market close. So in other words, it's a single day trade. It's just very simple to model. We release the forecast one day. Let's say we say Apple is going up. Then that means from the open to the close, we expect the share price of Apple to increase. We also have the opposite side. If we think Google is going down, that of course means that open to close, the price is going to decrease. And we've measured these forecasts over time in a forward-looking fashion. So this is just the raw data, looking at exactly how these forecasts have performed. And the key here, one point, of course, is we're outperforming the S&P. Now, the S&P has been on a tear, as we all know, since about 2009. And we've still been able to outperform it. But the main key that I want to point out is the correlation with the SPY. Now, this is one of the most interesting facts about our data. You can find many different ways to trade, many different tools that you can use, but it's very, very difficult to find something that is not correlated with the market. In other words, almost all traders want to find an edge. And to really find an edge, you need to find something that's different. Find something that makes money when other people are not making money. Now, of course, you can buy and hold the SPY. You can lock in that kind of conservative approach. But what if you need something to augment your portfolio? What if you need something different to really contribute more gains? Let's say the SPY's not moving, it's not volatile. You want to find the strategy that will give you returns even in those market regimes. And that's where an uncorrelated strategy can be really helpful. So I did want to mention that here. Now that I've talked a bit about the science, I do want to show you a demo of the tool. Now, as Ben mentioned, there are 3 different versions of the tool. What I'm going to be demoing is the Elite version, and this is the version that's available free. For everyone who's attending this webinar today, you can get a free version of PredictWallStreet Elite. So I definitely encourage you to check it out. You can add PredictWallStreet within eSignal 12.1. If you haven't upgraded to 12.1, you should do it. There are so many enhancements and changes and improvements. In addition to, of course, having PredictWallStreet available, there are a number of other tools that you'll be able to take advantage of. But the PredictWallStreet Elite version, this is where you'll see not only the raw data, the accuracy, the process data, but these daily forecasts. It's the whole package. PredictWallStreet Advanced will give you everything except the forecasts. You'll still get the process data, the chart, and the meter. And the basic version will give you the poll results and the accuracy. And you can do with that whatever you want. Some people like to actually look at the raw data and do their own studies. Personally, I find it simpler to just look at the process data. It's a lot easier to interpret. So with that, let me pull up eSignal here. So this is 12.1, and you can see under the eSignal Apps button right at the top here, when I click on that option, there are a number of new apps here that you can experiment with. Like I mentioned, I definitely encourage you to check this out. Let's go to PredictWallStreet Elite right now. You can see it's very easy to find. And when I pull that up, it's going to load in a separate window. And I have whatever stock I want to view visible here. Now I'm on Apple right now, so I'll just go ahead and talk about Apple. It's an easy one. And here you can see how the tool actually functions. So first we have the ability to vote on Apple. And you can see the different time frames, the 1-day time frame, Thursday. Voting in a week, a month, or in 3 months. So for Thursday, let's see, what's Apple doing? It's at 128. It's down about 1.5%. You know what? I actually think it's going to go up. Something about the Apple Watch, I don't know. Often when people make their vote, their first instinct is to say, well, I don't know anything. You know, I don't want to click. But you actually know far more than you realize. The principle behind this is that you are picking up information all around you. And when you click almost without thinking, you're actually processing information and contributing that to the tool. The more information we have, the better information we can feed back to you. So here you can see that I just voted up for tomorrow, for Thursday. And the poll results say 75% of people are saying up and 25% of people are saying down. Okay. And then if I look at the accuracy meter here, I can see that overall, and this is in the past 6 months, the community is 54% accurate. So the community is actually right more than it's wrong when it comes to the raw poll results. But where the information gets a little bit more interesting is with the community sentiment meter and the sentiment trend. So we can see that most people are saying up on Apple, but what does that mean? Is Apple really going up tomorrow? What we've done with the sentiment meter is we've looked at the pattern of predictions with Apple over time, over the past 6 months. We really want to identify when do we have something unusual happening? When is sentiment changing? Because that's when you have the opportunity. So we can see if most people are predicting up, you know, if I were to just see 75% of people say up on Apple, that sounds pretty positive. But what we can tell when we look at the sentiment meter is for Apple, that's actually slightly away from bullish. That's in the bearish range for Apple sentiment. So although 3/4 of people are saying up, that's low for Apple given the past 6 months performance. So it can give you a little bit more info about not only what the community is saying and how accurate they are, but also what the sentiment that you're seeing means in terms of the expected result for the stock. Now the meter is going to show different values for each stock depending on its own characteristics. For example, if I were to pull up a different stock, it might show 75% up, but for that stock, it could actually be a bullish indicator or an extremely bearish indicator. Each stock has its own characteristics, and that's what we basically factor in to the meter. Within the meter, we also show the relative sector and industry. So you can see here, we've got Apple alongside computer manufacturing and technology. And technology, you can see, is actually sitting in this extremely bearish range, which is kind of interesting. That's something I'm going to look into after this. The computer manufacturing's right around Apple. That probably makes sense. But this can also give you ideas on where else you might want to do some research. So, for example, if you see technology is extremely bearish, maybe it's time to check out some other tech stocks and see if maybe there's an opportunity there. Maybe they're plummeting. Maybe it's the case that now is a good time to buy. So how do you figure that out? Depending on whether the sentiment is bullish or bearish, how do you know whether that's a buy or a sell opportunity? That's really where the sentiment trend chart comes into play. So this last point on the trend chart here, you can see it's right about in the middle. That's the same as where the Apple flag is showing on the sentiment meter. That's the current sentiment today. And then here is the sentiment tracked over time. You can see this black line that I'm following with my mouse. You can see that the sentiment has been pretty high. In fact, it's been in this green, this extremely bullish range for the past couple of days. If I hover over these different indicators, we have these yellow bubbles and these green triangles, you can get news headlines related to Apple. So you can see, well, why was it so high? Why was sentiment up? You can quickly review all these different headlines and then kind of understand why sentiment might be increasing at the particular time. Now, of course, there's a number of reasons sentiment can be up. This is just a way to kind of give you additional information right here on the chart. Alongside sentiment, you can see this blue line. Now, that's price. So I can really track the movement of sentiment against the price. And this is where I can start to identify the characteristics that will enable me to make a smarter trade. So I just went to the one-day view of the chart to get us a little bit more zoomed in here. And I can see there's my sentiment line, the black, and it was bullish yesterday right around market close, and now it's kind of fading. And currently, as we know, it's right around neutral, just below. And how did the price look today? Well, it looks like the price actually fell. So what's interesting is, as of yesterday's close, sentiment was high. And then coming into today, you can see here's the midnight today, sentiment started to wane a little bit. People started to get a bit more pessimistic about Apple. And what happened today? The price actually fell from open to close. So this is one of those cases where we can look at these different charts, and it's going to be different for every stock, but we can start to understand how sentiment actually plays into the price changes of the stock. Now, the PredictWallStreet tool will cover US stocks, ETFs, and indices. We also cover symbols in some other countries. We do cover Canada and Europe. We cover Spain and France and Germany. But most of the activity is on US right now. So that's where you're going to get the bulk of data. The more data you have on each stock, the more information you'll have. So typically the popular retail stocks like the Apples, IBMs, everything you see here, these get quite a few votes. I did want to point out that we have the related stocks here on the left-hand side. So just below Apple, you can see I scroll down here. There's a list of other names. These are stocks that people who predicted on Apple have also predicted. It's a little bit different than saying these are related stocks. Stocks in the same sector, same industry, same type of business, competitors. These are stocks that other predictors are also noticing. This can be another way to find out what else you might want to research. If you're an Apple fanatic, but you're looking for something else that others happen to invest on, you might want to check out some of these names. So for example, IBM here. Well, okay, Apple, IBM. Sure, let's go ahead and predict IBM. I can click right here to cast my vote, and I can see the same data instantly. So you can see I see 73% of people saying up, also very positive, like Apple. But here, for IBM, that's actually close to the extremely bullish range. That's very different than what we saw with Apple. And you can click, of course, any of these other names. You can always change symbol as well. For example, if I want to change the ticker symbol, I can do it right here in the menu, and then vote on Google. And of course, I should show you the technical indicators for today. Now, these are today's forecasts. The forecasts that we show, you can see on the left-hand side, they have expired. They always expire at market close. We don't want people to see the forecasts and think that they're for the following day. They're for the current day. So when you go into the PredictWallStreet tool, you want to go in anytime before market close, and you'll see the forecast listed here. You can actually kind of see them. They're grayed out, but you can see them underneath. KR, BAC, BIIB, and Tesla, those are all mentioned here. And you can see how they've performed on the right-hand side. So we're completely transparent with this. I showed you the performance chart of the forecasts. The idea behind the forecast is just to give you something else that's easy to understand. If you're just looking for, a directional indicator for a stock, you don't want to do a whole lot of research. You can look at the forecast and see what our data is telling us. These are, the 3 to 6 very strong signals that we're producing in the morning, and we just put them out, so it's very easy to see. Personally, look at the charts and really do my own research. I like to use sentiment to understand the way the stock moves, to really pick up information that's outside of the news, something that's going to give me a bit more confidence and a bit of a better investment. But with the forecast, like I mentioned, completely transparent. We'll show you here on the right-hand side when we're right and wrong. You can see that we had some rights and wrongs yesterday. We'll show this every day, so you can see exactly how we're doing, and you can actually track the performance over time and see for yourself, how we follow that P&L curve that I showed you earlier. Now I think that to take a few questions, we can probably do that. I'm not sure if there's any questions outstanding right now. I already talked a lot about how the PredictWallStreet tool functions, and you can see how you can access it. Like I mentioned, Elite is available for free right now, so I would definitely recommend you check out Elite now while it's completely free, so you can get in and start to use it and understand how the tool can help you in your trading.
Okay. Folks, again, this is Ben from eSignal. Thank you, Calen, for presenting. Folks, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat box window right now, and Calen or I will respond to them.
So while everyone's composing their questions, just a quick summary frame here that I can show. We talked a bit about the science. Nobel Prize winning science is really the foundation for this. We talked about the two approaches to crowds and crowd information, the wisdom of crowds, and how PredictWallStreet is more like that jelly beans in the jar, where we want to take as much information as possible and put it together to give you the best indication of what's going to happen. We also discussed that madness of crowds, how crowds can be crazy, how crowds can actually do things that don't make sense, but that can also be an opportunity to make money. And when we talk about making money, we're really talking about generating profits with trading, whether that's going with the crowd or identifying when sentiment is leading price, or whether it's identifying that sentiment has actually gone too high, and at some point when it's a completely high, extremely bullish sentiment, often everyone is bought in, and that's the time when you might want to take a short position or basically expect to capitalize on the stock decreasing in price. I showed the forecasts and their performance since 2007. Now that's forward looking. I keep mentioning that. We keep releasing these before market opens. So, we just put out the signals that we create every day, and we've been tracking that performance for 8 years. So you can really see that those forecasts can be useful even on their own. And then last, I showed the demo of eSignal 12.1. If you don't have it, download it. It's great. The best eSignal to date, of course. And you can use PredictWallStreet Elite for free. So that's the quick summary of what we have here.
So again, folks, good opportunity for you now, while we have Calen in front of us to kind of answer any questions you may have. Any questions regarding the presentation, pricing again, Elite has a free trial right now for you to try out. Also, if anyone is interested in downloading the latest eSignal version, we obviously have 12.1, which is our latest version. This launched literally a week and a half ago. Any questions from the audience regarding today's presentation or the market, commentary or whatnot, please feel free to type it in the chat box window. Let's give it a few minutes while people formulate some questions.
While I have some time, I'm just going to poke around a little bit with the tool. Let's see what we can get. I mentioned the tool can cover stocks, ETFs, and indices. So see what we've got for NASDAQ today. NASDAQ about 76% up, and that's actually right around the neutral range. Major US indices about the same, and the NYSE indices slightly more bullish. I'm going to pull up a SPY. Let's see what we've got going on for SPY today. All right, SPY is also pretty neutral. Look at the chart of SPY. You can see here that SPY is very, very neutral all night last night, and then while the price moved today, there actually wasn't that much movement in sentiment. Finally, I'm going to pull up one of the forecasts, BIIB. See what the price of BIB did. Definitely went up today. Look in here and take a look at Biogen. Got to go down, right? I'm going to look at the past week in sentiment here to really see what's happening. I can see what price did, the blue line, and price had kind of dropped over time, and then right around here with this big cluster of news, we can see that sentiment just spiked up. Let me see if I can zoom in on that to the 1 day. Yeah, here's the spike in sentiment. So here's one of those cases where we can really see that sentiment is essentially tracking price. The price right here in blue, you can see it went up today, of course, and then cases where we just see sentiment sort of riding that wave of price.
So Calen, we've gotten our first question of today, and it comes from Dave, where he asks, can we see past predictions going back several months? Can you do a quick demo of that?
Sure. So the best way to really see the history, we can't see the raw data through this particular tool. You know, the raw poll results showing the 74% up or 26% down over the past days. The best way that we can see this in the tool is really through this sentiment chart. So if you want to look at what predictions were in the past, you can see, let me go back here to the 1 month view, how far back we can go. And this chart actually goes up to a year. We have data that goes back, you know, all the way to 2007. But the year is as much as we can really fit in here. You can see it gets a little bit tough to see. We only have so much screen real estate that we want to take up here. So the 3 month and the 1 month is often more useful in terms of being able to identify the trends in sentiment. But basically, you can see the poll results today, 74% up, and that's in the extremely bullish range. So then you can kind of infer how the poll results have looked going back in time. Now, again, this is all process sentiment, so this is taking in the character of the stock. So it's going to, you know, sort of normalize the poll results to give you a line that's a bit more smooth and a bit more readable, and also more useful when it comes to predicting the price of the stock, the future movements. And this is the best way that you can really look back in time to see what people have been saying.
Do we have any other questions in the crowd? So David Elliott came back with a new question. Oh, excuse me. David Elliott came in with a question. Excuse me, Calen. His question is, where's the predictive value? It seems to just track price in real time. Can you show an example of where this tool anticipated predicted price?
Sure. So let me pull up Apple again. Let's see if we can get that. I'll move this back to my side window here where you can see it a little bit better. So here, this is what I was describing earlier. Let me do a little bit of a zoom out here. You can see that the sentiment here was very high, and then it started to decrease. Now, at this point, the price was still going up. So I don't know if you can see, depending on your screen, the price here, this was on the 28th during the market day. You can see it elevated between market close and market open. The price was a bit up between the 28th close and today's open. But you can also see the sentiment. It had actually peaked during the market day on the 28th, and it started to plummet. So although the price was really going up here, the sentiment continued to drop. And the way I see that, if I zoom in back to the 1 day, right around here, you can tell sentiment where it was extremely bullish has now begun to drop. And now, typically, the way I might use this information in this case, you can see that sentiment had been extremely bullish, and you can say, all right, now that's an opportunity to really sell. I don't know if it's that you're holding an Apple position, you want to sell, you want to short. You can basically find a way to take advantage of the fact that you see sentiment essentially peaking here. And if you'd let's say done a short position right at market open here based on sentiment dropping overnight, you would have been able to take advantage of today's decline. So let's see, I'm not sure. It opened at 130 today and it closed at 128. That's the type of thing that you can really see through here. That's one example of the predict.
Okay, great. David, let us know if that answered your questions. If not, please go ahead and type in a clarification question. And again, as a reminder, the elite version of Predict Wall Street has a free first month trial at this point. So definitely give it a test drive, as I may say, for those of you who are looking to get an app that provides this type of data for you. So David asked, can you assign a probability to that? So I guess
So
it's a
the
follow-up question.
probability, I think the best way to really assign the probability, you can always look at the accuracy. There's a 54% accuracy on the community here. We don't show an actual probability. There's a number of statistical values that you can use to really say when the line, for example, is at a certain point, what's the probability that it's going to predict the future? We don't have that kind of data on this chart or within the tool. So the accuracy is the closest thing we have to that type of data.
Okay, got it. Okay. Folks, again, we have Calen Lopata from Predict Wall Street. Please feel free to send in any questions, commentary you may have regarding the app or eSignal in general. So we'll be able to respond to your questions. Again, we'll give it a couple more minutes as people think about what questions they're going to send in, and please type it in the chat box.
One thing I should demo, I know there's more questions coming in right now. I did want to show that you can predict these other time frames. Now, one of the values of predicting the additional time frames is it kind of gives you an idea for people's expectations further into the future. So you can do a side-by-side comparison of these different time frames. So for Thursday, we already saw Apple was 75% up. But for the week, month, and 3 months, you can see there's this escalating positive sentiment. There's more and more people voting up for those time frames. In other words, while sentiment may be, in Apple's case, somewhat neutral at 75%, that sentiment is showing higher and higher values further out in the future. So although people may be a little bit wary today over the, let's say week, month, or quarter, people definitely expect it to go up.
Okay. Thank you, Calen. So Dave just wanted to ask, so mainly his theory is, do you buy when extremely bearish and sell when you're extremely bullish? Is that kind of a fair sentiment of how to use the app?
That's a great way to use it. There are different characteristics for some stocks. You'll sometimes see that a lot of stocks will have a kind of directional indicator. When you see sentiment going up, that indicates that the price is going up. But often, especially with big retail stocks, very popular stocks, Apple's a really popular one, big name, big brand. You can often detect when sentiment is high, that's a chance to see the price drop. And likewise, when sentiment is low, that could be a buying opportunity. And it kind of goes back to the way the data works. We're gathering data from hundreds of thousands of people throughout the internet. So it's not just on eSignal where we're gathering this data. We actually have a number of different areas and partners where we're gathering the information. All that data is fed into Predict Wall Street and back to you through the chart, the meter, and the accuracy in the poll results. So when you get a stock like Apple that has a lot of retail investors participating on it, often, going back to that example, when you see extremely bullish sentiment, that can indicate that the majority of retail investors have bought into the stock. It's got nowhere else to go. And that could be a chance to really take advantage, and you'd expect the price to drop. And likewise, if the sentiment is very low, if it's extremely bullish, that could mean that the retail investors are completely out. The stock is basically hit bottom, and you might have a chance to get in at that point. That might be the best opportunity where you could get in. So that's just kind of typical characteristics of these sort of big name stocks like the Apples, that sort of thing. But like I mentioned, each stock is going to have its own characteristics. So I definitely say look at the charts and really see how things behave.
Thank you, Kellen. So we have a request to see if you can pull up the 1 month chart for QQQ. Do you mind? Okay, it looks like you're starting it already. Thank you, Kellen.
Yeah, I am. Let me go
Dave,
to
anything specific that you want? Is there anything specific you want Kalen to comment on regarding QQQ?
just looking at I've got the 1 week here. It's a little bit more clear to see. Now with QQQ, this is kind of an interesting one with the Qs. We see it's in the bullish range today, and it actually is kind of a slow mover in terms of sentiment. You can see that it's got this, slightly below the midline. That's in the slightly bearish range earlier this week, and then it's done a bit of a rise right around. I guess this is between the 25th and the 26th. So just a couple of days ago. There's a couple of news headlines here. These just talk about earnings, that sort of thing. It looks like so no clear indication from the news about what's going on, but that's a bit of a view into the Qs. So what I see here, I see that. Go ahead and pull up the Q chart as well, so we can do another comparison here. I can kind of see on the chart here in Predict Wall Street that the price had a bit of a rise, and then sentiment was up right around the time it was rising, and then sentiments begun to fall, or excuse me, prices began to fall, while sentiment still remained high. So this is one of those cases where you can see that sentiment looks like it actually lags the price a little bit, where you see the price went up and then sentiment kind of caught up to it. So in this case, I wouldn't take the sentiment itself as the only indicator for which direction the Qs are going to move. Each stock is going to be different. In this case, the Qs looks like it's actually 50-50 split in terms of people's voting, and then 60% accurate over time. So it's kind of interesting. This is one of those stocks where you don't necessarily see a strong indication one way or another just by looking at the sentiment. And I see,
Thanks,
Dave, you're
Kellen.
asking, since it peaked recently, it'd be interesting to see if a sell signal was produced. And yeah, while we see, the subtle changes in here, you could almost, kind of amplify the chart and say, well, maybe this is kind of a peak sentiment. Now's a chance to exit. But personally, it just my own opinion. Looking at this chart, I don't see something here strong enough to tell me one way or another. Like with the Apple example, where we saw something in that extremely bullish range. That's really key. When stocks cross this green line here or this red line here, that's in that extreme range. That's where you tend to have the biggest opportunities.
Okay, great. Folks, again, Calen Lopata from Predict Wall Street is presenting the Predict Wall Street app. Do you have any other questions, comments um, regarding the market, regarding how to leverage the app, eSignal? Please feel free to type them in the chat box window, and we'll get to them in due time. Let's give it a couple minutes as people think about questions to formulate. Hey, Kaylin, by the way, while we think about seeing if people have any questions, do you want to kind of quickly demo your website in case people want to see what kind of information is on your website?
Sure, you bet. I could pull that up really quickly. And anybody who has questions, I know the recording of this webinar is going to be distributed to the attendees, which is fantastic. So if you want to review, that's great. And of course, through our website, you can always contact us if you have questions about the tool, specifically within eSignal. If there's things you want to see, we had this great question here about looking at the probability of the stocks. That's a great example of something that we could add to the tool going forward. We still like to behave like a small company and come up with new concepts. And eSignal is a great chance to try it out because here it's really the sophisticated active traders. Those are the folks we love working with because they can take advantage of this data on a daily basis and really make the most of it. So any feedback, any other questions that you might come up with later, please feel free to submit through the website. So of course, PredictWallStreet.com, as you might expect, that is the site. And here we have a quick video. This is another overview of how things work. And of course, if you need to contact us, just scroll down to the bottom, hit that link. There's a little form that you could submit to send us your questions. On the site, we have a bit more information about why we're doing what we're doing. Some of this will be, duplication of what we discussed today, but we also have other kind of bullet points that you can look at. The main thing about the site is we have the prediction interface as well. You can do a little bit more with the chart here. With eSignal, the charting options there are already so sophisticated. We kept our charts pretty simple, but here you can do a bit more zooming and scaling with the chart. Plus, we have slightly different orientation of the sentiment meter and the accuracy. So a number of different things you can see here. I think probably the most key thing that you might want to look at on the site is we have the total number of predictions. So this will give you an idea for how many people are voting on a stock. So let me pull up Apple real quick. So here with Apple, I can show you, in the past 90 days, we've had almost 40,000 predictions. So it gives you an idea of the volume of data that you're really working with. Some stocks like Apple will have, substantial volume. Other stocks might have only a few predictions. Obviously, more data is better, and you kind of have your own threshold as to how many votes you want to see to really, take stake in it. Some people, if you just have 10 votes, that's enough. Some people want 100, 1,000. It's really, how much credit you're going to give the different stocks sentiment information based on the voting. So that's the main thing I think you can pick up here. Quick tutorial that you can go through, very simple. And you can also participate in some of the contests. Obviously, we have a blog, and one of the other interesting features about the website is you can post your comments regarding your predictions. So as you cast your vote about which direction you expect things to go, you can actually say why you think things are going to go the direction we go. So this could be a great place to do some research. And finally, advantage of the site, we have a stock screener tool. So if you wanted to locate new investments, other opportunities based on sentiment, you could narrow down your search, let's say I want to find a certain number of predictions, a certain sentiment in a certain area. I can click to do the screen and really see the different stocks that fit what I'm looking for. So whirlwind tour of the Predict Wall Street site. Like I mentioned, please do contact us with ideas, questions, suggestions. If you check out the site, that's great. Feel free to sign up and participate. We can send you alerts based on sentiment, based on your screeners. And then, of course, within eSignal, what's really convenient there is you have a more compact tool with a lot more related stocks that you can easily vote on. And you have all the same data here that you can use to make better trades.
So again, folks, wanted to see if there's any final questions, comments regarding today's presentation. While we have Calen on the line, I'll give it another minute, and then if not, we'll formally close out this webinar, okay? So again, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat box window, and Calen or I will respond in due time.
Since we have a little bit of space here, I'll just point out the high prediction activity ticker. Very simple thing. It's another way that you can gather some quick ideas, things that you might want to invest in. It's essentially what you could find through the stock screener. This is just a way to kind of call out some of the stocks that are getting unusual activity. So these could be stocks that happen to be in the news, or stocks that retail investors just aren't thinking about, talking about, have ideas about. So it's another way to kind of identify stocks besides just doing your own research. You can really harvest information that's available through the predictions right here.
Okay, folks, if there's no other further questions, let's go ahead and formally close out this webinar. Again, hello, it's Ben from eSignal. I would like to thank Calen for taking time out of his schedule to spend time with us today. I would also like to thank all of you for coming to today's webinar. I hope you found it useful for your trading education. As a final reminder, you will be receiving a copy of today's webinar as a thank you for attending. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and will join us again soon. And again, for those of you who are still on, please take a note of the Predict Wall Street special offer, which is the first month free trial for Elite. Normal retail is $99.99 per month. The web address is predictwallstreet.com, and the product page for you to learn more about the Predict Wall Street apps is available here in the notes section. And again, thank you for coming. We hope to see you again soon in a future webinar.